Okay, this is Chapter 2, Part 5, and we're going to do a quick overview of energy as it relates to electrons. So we're going to have a whole lecture later on about energy, but it's really important to understand that electrons have energy, and they have different energy states. And this is really the whole idea of the orbitals and the energy states. It's not a position of the electrons around the atom, it is an energy state. So when they're going to a higher energy state, then they can also return to a lower energy state and actually emit energy. So those electron shells, nothing to do with position, it is their energy state. So as they go to a higher energy level, they are gaining energy. They can go back to a lower energy and emit energy. We're going to encounter this when we're talking about photosynthesis and metabolism. It's going to be a lot of energy basically being transferred via electrons. So when you took Chem 120, you went through all the energy levels and energy states and the different orbitals, and just want you really to understand the model, the Bohr model, this model over here. It's a very good model, but it does not represent the position of electrons. The electrons are not orbiting around. These are energy states. So really important to understand that. So the Bohr model, wonderful model, but it is not a good model for illustrating where the electrons are, but it is good for energy states. Different shells, we'll come back to that. So let me go back up here to the picture. So in this Bohr model, it's a very, very good model to visually understand the energy states, not the position. So in the Bohr model, protons and neutrons are obviously there in the nucleus, but the electrons, there are different shells, and in the first shell, you can have 2 electrons. Can reside in the first shell. Then in a bigger shell, the second shell, outside of that, how many electrons do you think you can have in the second shell? You can have 8 electrons. And as you keep going, you get like third shell, 8. We don't really worry about the ones too far past that because they're really not that important in biological organisms. So first shell, you can have up to 2 electrons. Second and third shell, up to 8 electrons. The outermost shell, we call that the valence shell. And it's going to be the highest energy, and it's going to be really important to pay attention to the valence shell because that is going to dictate how atoms behave, how they're going to bond. So when we say an orbital, it's a 3-dimensional kind of representation. When you looked at those S and P orbitals when you were in chemistry, it's where an electron might be found. So it's where it is in space, but then there's also, like I said, the electron shells, which are going to be their energy state. So when you look at the Bohr model, don't think of that as where the electrons are, think of that as their energy state. Our next little lecture is going to be bonds, and we're going to start out with covalent bonds.